Believe it or not, Biker Mice from Mars is all set for another return in 2026, and this time it is a new animated reboot. With such an update, I simply had to make a video explaining how the earlier cartoons ended. The series was about anthropomorphic mice, and on top of that, they were bikers. The three heroes from the original show had fought against a parasitic alien race that was stripping Mars of its natural resources. After escaping the conflict and reaching Earth, they discovered that the same enemy was preparing to exploit another planet. Naturally, the heroic humanoid mice could not allow another world to suffer the same fate as Mars. The original series ran from 1993 to 1996. A continuation arrived in 2006 and continued airing into 2007. Now, nearly 2 decades later, another animated version is being developed. At this rate, there might be yet another reboot 3 decades from now in 2056. But silly jokes apart, Biker Mice from Mars has an extremely fascinating and peculiar history. Most uniquely, it has more than one ending, which is rare for a cartoon franchise. In this video, I'm going to explore all of that and much more. So without further ado, let's begin.
Your brains, your bros, and your bike.
From a studio city, Delhi, to Mars, the fascinating creation of Biker Mice. The core idea behind Biker Mice from Mars came from writer and producer Rick Unger, who created the series while working at Marvel Productions, the company that later became New World Animation. Unger worked on several major animated Marvel productions, including X-Men, the animated series, Iron Man, Fantastic Four, and The Incredible Hulk. He was also involved with the 2007 animated film Kong: Return to the Jungle. Needless to say, Unger became an important figure in the animation landscape of the 1990s and early 2000s. But how exactly did he come up with the idea of turning mice into anthropomorphic beings who were also bikers? According to the frequently repeated creation story, it began with a Sunday brunch. Rick Unger, his family, and a couple of friends visited a popular deli in Studio City. A group of motorcycle enthusiasts arrived, removed their helmets, and entered the restaurant to enjoy breakfast. Unger noticed the fascination they created among both children and adults. He was also struck by the contrast between the stereotypical image of a threatening biker gang and the reality that many members of this particular group appeared to be ordinary white-collar professionals. That experience reportedly started Unger's creative wheels turning. It eventually contributed to the creation of Biker Mice from Mars, featuring 3 muscular Martian freedom fighters named Throttle, Vinny, and Moto. The experience convinced him that biker iconography could work extremely well in a children's action cartoon. And honestly, he was right. Was it based on a comic book, a toy line, or the Ninja Turtles? What worked in Rick Unger's favor was that his idea emerged at a time when broadcasters, animation studios, and toy companies were searching for properties capable of following the success of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The Turtles had shown that anthropomorphic animal heroes could support cartoons, comics, toys, games, and enormous merchandising campaigns. Biker Mice from Mars clearly belonged to that wider wave of animal-based action cartoons. Both shows featured teams of anthropomorphic heroes fighting unusual villains. The Turtles were ninjas. Our mice were bikers. If the Turtles had April O'Neil, the mice had Charlie Davidson. You know, Harley Davidson, bikes, biker mice, and Charlie Davidson. That is not all. If the Turtles were crazy about pizza, the mice had the same amount of love, if not more, for hot dogs. Both groups even had memorable hideouts. The Turtles lived in the sewers, while the Martians operated around Quigley Field and used the scoreboard as a base. Even Grease Pit gave me some serious Rocksteady vibes. Biker Mice was undeniably one of the more successful cartoons produced during the post-TMNT anthropomorphic action boom. Throttle voice actor Robert Paulson has also acknowledged the obvious connection to the Turtles' success, while remembering Biker Mice as a genuinely enjoyable show with cool music and plenty of humor. But I do not mean that Biker Mice was simply a ripoff or a copy of Ninja Turtles. Calling it that would do the series a huge disservice. The cartoon developed more than enough personality, mythology, music, characters, and political subtext to stand on its own. Marvel later published a 3-issue Biker Mice from Mars comic series during the original show's era. A 4th issue was planned or solicited, but was never released as part of that run. The franchise was also supported by an extensive toy line. However, the television concept did not begin as an adaptation of an older, established comic book mythology. The cartoon, comics, and toys were developed as connected parts of a new franchise. And what began the creative process was reportedly a group of bikers inspiring a writer and producer. Being a biker myself, I am admittedly a little biased in favor of this nice but frequently misunderstood community.
Yo, Mouse.
You got a problem?
Why did Throttle, Moto, and Vinny come to Earth? One thing that really irks me is the name of the show. Biker Mice from Mars is a catchy title, sure, but it does not fully represent how much substance the story actually had. Throttle, Moto, and Vinny were not ordinary superpowered mice who randomly came to Earth and became heroes. They were survivors and freedom fighters from an interplanetary resource war. Mars had been devastated by the Plutarchians, a fish-like alien race that stripped other planets of natural resources after ruining its own world. It is a familiar science fiction concept, but it made the Plutarchians a frightening race of parasitic colonizers who wanted to suck their targets dry of minerals, fuel, wealth, water, and anything else they could exploit. That is not entirely different from events in real human history, if you think about it. The three mice eventually reached Earth and landed in Chicago, where they met mechanic Charlene Davidson, better known as Charlie. Life on Earth was only slightly better than what they had experienced on Mars. They soon discovered that the same exploitative system they had fought at home had spread to Earth. Their main enemy was Lawrence Limburger, a Plutarchian who concealed his fish-like appearance beneath a human disguise. Limburger planned to steal Earth's resources and send them back to Plutarch. The biker mice had already watched one world suffer. They were not willing to let the same thing happen to the planet that had become their second home. When many of us watched the show as children, we probably did not understand all the politics, but the underlying idea was easy to recognize. Mars had been robbed of its resources. Earth was next. That gave the show recurring environmental themes involving exploitation, pollution, waste, and the abuse of non-renewable resources. However, it would be inaccurate to claim that these themes were included solely because of the Children's Television Act of 1990. The act created obligations involving educational and informational programming for children, but it did not declare that every cartoon had to be educational. Broadcasters did face increasing pressure to identify and provide programming that served children's educational needs. Some entertainment shows incorporated moral, social, or environmental lessons that could support those expectations. But without direct confirmation from the creators, we should not claim that the act was the specific reason Biker Mice adopted its environmental message. Whatever the business reasoning was, the theme suited the story perfectly. The three biker mice also carried visible reminders of the war on Mars. Throttle had lost his natural eyesight and received bionic eyes. Moto lost his right arm and one eye, leaving him dependent on cybernetic replacements. Vinny suffered severe burns on one side of his face and wore the mask that became one of the franchise's signature visuals. These injuries showed just how difficult their lives have been on Mars. They were not superheroes who walked away from every fight untouched. They carried permanent damage from the war. Then there was Charlie. What can I say about her? Yes, she occupied a role that invited comparisons to April O'Neil, but Charlie was far more than a sidekick or a convenient mechanic. The original series portrayed her as a headstrong partner who could fight, repair vehicles, invent solutions, and hold her own in dangerous situations. The mice often tried to keep her away from danger because they cared about her, but make no mistake, she was no damsel in distress. Maybe Charlie was the character who made a cartoon about heavy metal, motorcycles, alien colonization, and mutant mice feel warmer than anyone expected.
As your old gray-furred mama used to say.
How did the original cartoon end? Unlike many cartoons, Biker Mice from Mars effectively received two animated endings. The original series ran from 1993 to 1996. Its concluding story was a three-part episode titled Once Upon a Time on Mars. The trilogy did not permanently resolve the entire conflict with the Plutarchians, but it revealed the tragic history behind the heroes. Through an extended story set largely during the war on Mars, viewers finally learned what happened to Throttle's eyes, Modo's arm, Vinny's face, and Harley. A decade later, Biker Mice returned in a continuation that began in 2006 and aired through 2007. Rick Unger was again involved with the franchise, and this version eventually delivered another ending through the episode Turf Wars. But let's take a closer look at both conclusions. In Once Upon a Time on Mars, the series finally explored the Biker Mice's history as Martian freedom fighters. The trilogy revealed the events surrounding their injuries and the disappearance of Harley. Harley was not simply a nurse. She was a skilled mechanic, medic, resistance member, and an important person in Vinny's life. The story also involved the Plutarchians' continuing plans for planetary exploitation. A device known as the Tug Transformer was connected to their strategy of moving planets closer to Plutarch, so their resources could be stolen more efficiently. The storyline linked Earth's danger directly to what had happened on Mars. It explained how the Plutarchian invasion devastated the Mice's home, how the heroes received the permanent injuries visible throughout the series, and how betrayal fractured the Resistance. The trilogy gave the Biker Mice emotional history, but it did not end with Mars completely restored or the Plutarchians permanently defeated. The heroes still had battles ahead of them. So the original ending worked more as an origin revelation than a final conclusion to the war. It looked backward and showed viewers the real price of the swagger, jokes, bikes, and bravado. How did the 2006 continuation end? The continuation began airing in 2006 and expanded the story beyond the original conflict. It placed more focus on Stoker, one of the founders and major leaders of the Martian resistance. Like the Biker Mice, Stoker had also been seriously injured and possessed a cybernetic replacement for his lost tail. The conflict now involved a new alien enemy known as the Catatonians. As the name suggests, they were cat-like aliens. They wanted control of a powerful device known as the Regenerator. Stoker created the Regenerator as a machine capable of rearranging matter. Most importantly for the Martians, it offered the possibility of restoring water to their devastated planet. General Carbine, Throttle's love interest and Stoker's niece, later developed the Surgerator, which could greatly amplify the Regenerator's power. Together, these devices could alter landscapes and transform living beings. The Regenerator could even evolve or de-evolve organisms. At one point, Carbuncle was transformed into a turtle. The continuation also introduced Ronaldo Rump, expanded Stoker's role, and brought in Spitfire, Stoker's daughter. Many viewers remember the three-part story Once Upon a Time on Earth as the finale because it feels like a major franchise event. The trilogy addresses the struggle over the Regenerator, the future of Mars, Stoker's loyalties, and the conflict among the Martians, Plutarchians, and Catatonians. However, it is not the final episode. In the standard aired order, Once Upon a Time on Earth forms episodes 25 through 27. The actual series finale is episode 28, Turf Wars. And believe it or not, Turf Wars is essentially a rock opera. The episode uses music as the conflict reaches its conclusion. The Regenerator and Surgerator finally help restore water to Mars. The Catatonians are de-evolved into ordinary cats, ending their immediate threat. The finale gives the Martians something they had been fighting toward for years. Their planet once again has a future. It does not solve every possible problem or close every relationship with absolute finality, but it leaves Mars in a far better condition than when the story began. The original show ended by revealing the pain of the past. The continuation ended by giving the mice and their people hope for the future. The comics brought the Biker Mice back. After Turf Wars, the animated series did not return for another full installment at that time. Still, it would be wrong to say Biker Mice died as a property. It remained alive through toys, merchandise, video games, reruns, and the nostalgia carried by people like you and me. The franchise later received a major revival through comics and the Neliverse. Omni Press launched a new Biker Mice from Mars #1 on July 17, 2024. The 3-issue miniseries was written by Melissa Flores and illustrated by Francis Portela. It reintroduced Throttle, Modo, and Vinny through the new shared Neliverse continuity. Then, in 2025, Omni Press and Nacelle expanded the brand again with the first ongoing Biker Mice from Mars comic series. The new first issue went on sale on June 25, 2025. It was again written by Melissa Flores, this time with artwork by Daniel Gett. The comic formed another part of the franchise's modern relaunch and helped expand the characters ahead of their return to animation. Oni leaned into a somewhat rougher and more dramatic tone for the comic version. Personally, I think that style suits the biker mice. These three heroes had been through an interplanetary war and carried some of the darkest physical injuries seen among cartoon protagonists from that era. How many children's cartoon heroes do you know who began the series with lost limbs, destroyed organs, severe burns, and cybernetic replacements? Exactly. The Neliverse is also designed as a genuine shared universe. It connects biker mice from Mars with properties including Roboforce, Sectars, and Power Lords. And I mentioned a future television series, right? Let's talk about that.
Mars! We'll bring life back to Mars!
The mice are still headed for another comeback. Biker Mice from Mars is officially being developed as a new animated series, and Nacelle has identified it as part of the company's 2026 plans. However, no reliable official announcement has confirmed that a complete first season has a specific release date, and there is no confirmed second season release scheduled for 2028. In July 2023, Nacelle announced that Ryan Reynolds, his company Maximum Effort, and Fubo had joined forces on the new animated project. Nacelle founder Brian Volk Weiss was announced to direct with Reynolds. Volk Weiss and George Dewey serving among the executive producers connected to the series. Ryan Reynolds discussed his own enthusiasm for motorcycles and said the team wanted to put a new spin on the cult classic. The original announcement did not provide a premiere date. Since then, Nacelle has continued developing the brand through toys, comics, crossover appearances, and its wider Nacelle-verse slate. By early 2026, the company was still publicly describing the Biker Mice animated series as being on the way. That is an encouraging sign. But until Nacelle confirms a precise platform, trailer, cast, episode count, and release date, we should avoid treating those details as settled. What is confirmed is that Throttle, Moto, and Vinny are being prepared for another animated ride.
Come on, little horses!
Final thoughts. The original Biker Mice from Mars cartoon ended by finally revealing what the heroes' swagger had cost them. Once Upon a Time on Mars turned their scars into a story. It linked Earth's danger to the destruction of Mars and gave the heroes a past heavy enough to match their attitude. The continuation ended in a more hopeful way. Turf Wars helped return water to Mars and removed the immediate Catatonian threat. One ending looked backward and explained the pain. The other looked ahead and suggests that the fight had achieved something meaningful. Maybe that is why the franchise still sticks with people. Beneath the title, the cheese-themed villains, the rock music, and the toy shelf energy, this was always a story about losing a home and fighting to restore it. That truth carried the original series, the continuation, the comics, and the reboot plans now in motion. For a show that began with an extremely marketable idea, that is a pretty solid legacy. That's all for this one, folks. If you liked the video, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more awesome videos.